Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome to the fall semester of 2021, another COVID year. All right. But we want to start off today. We invited the interim provost for the University of Jeanette and Mendez to kind of talk to you at the start and let you know about how excited she is about starting a new year and the kinds of things that will be going on around campus to get us and the students fired up. We're going to have a lot of kids here this fall. More than 900 kids will join us in the fall with transfer students, new freshmen, and pre-CEAT students, just our college. So it's a fantastic time to see the new kids in the door. And so Jeanette, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. Appreciate being here. I was just telling Chuck it seems a little surreal because my very first class I taught at OSU was in this room 16 years ago. So kind of seems a little weird I'd be back here 16 years later in the same room. Maybe a little just as scared, but it doesn't look quite as big as it did when I was teaching for that first time. So anyways, thank you for having me. I just want to give a couple updates, but also leave some time for some Q&A. The one thing that's on everyone's mind, of course, is COVID, so I'm going to put that at the end of my updates, and I'll talk a little bit about our new president. So we're excited to welcome President Shrum. She joined us in July. If you didn't know that, and who doesn't know that, she has hit the ground running. She is busy as all get out. She has had challenges already come up, the first being the conference realignment discussion. So I think while she was prepared for it, I don't think we were prepared for the timing and what that was going to do for her schedule. But we've had updates from her as well as Chad Weiberg, and we feel like we're in a really good place in terms of where we're going to go with those discussions. And really the reason that we're in such a good place is because of our strong academics and our strong research, of which your college is leading the way in so much of those initiatives. If you haven't seen the new campaign, it's called Orange is the Answer. So that's all over social media right now. We'll be putting billboards and printouts, but it's all a research-focused communications about OSU being the one leading the way and solving the world's problems. So look for that. That was one of her very first things that she kicked off. The other thing that she's doing that's a little different for us is a system-wide approach to everything we're doing. So it's very easy being here, just being insular and thinking that Stillwater is the only OSU. But of course we have our branch campuses. We have Tulsa Center for Health Sciences, IT, and Oklahoma City. And she's hiring a senior vice president of operations that's going to oversee kind of this system-wide approach. So we're getting ready to interview for that. But I think there's going to be a lot of synergies that we'll be able to partner with our other institutions and move us forward. She's also, and this wouldn't be any surprise to the work that you guys are doing, heavily focused on industry partnerships. So I think, again, your college is positioned extremely well with the work you already do with industry, but making sure, again, that we have those partnerships in place and that we're putting out a student that we know is going to be successful, leading the way, and that the OSU brand means something. So I think that's going to be a big part of her strategic planning process. So we will do strategic planning. We expect in the first 90 days she was going to bring on a consultant. So the senior vice president of operations will help oversee that. So we're expecting to have the consultant in place in the next month or two. And then we'll take the year in discussion. So that's all I know on the strategic planning process, but you'll hear a lot more about it once we get that position filled. So in terms of other things going on campus, as Dean Tukolsky had said, enrollment looks good. We're getting ready to bring in 4,200 first-time freshmen, so our transfer numbers are up. 4,200 is right at the goal we're trying to hit. That's our 2019 number. I hear CEAT's numbers are higher for your transfer and freshmen coming in, but we're sitting right around where we were in 2019. So we're excited about that. The students are back, if you haven't seen them. They're moving in. They're extremely excited. My thing when I'm thinking about the students this year is recognizing not just what we've been going through with COVID and how we've been adjusting, but a lot of these students just ended their high school experience with 2 years online, or at least a year and a half, and they're excited to be back here and in person and to have a more traditional experience. I don't want to use the word normal because I don't think we will ever be pre-pandemic normal. I think we'll be adjusting to what a new normal is. But everything I'm hearing, I just met with the student government president, vice president, the students are just really excited to be here. And the one thing that is on their mind is that they just want to be involved, and they're just so tired of the last 2 years. So I think if we're just keeping that in mind from their perspective, it's been equally as tough on them as it has been on us. One of the things that we're launching this year in coordination with Student Affairs is something called Beyond the Transcript. So Student Affairs is leading this way. I think we'll end up calling it something different. But it's this idea of a competency-based approach that you're gaining in the classroom, but supplementing co-curricularly. And that's why Student Affairs is leading that. So be looking for more information on that. We'll be partnering with your leaders in the college and seeing what competencies you already have being developed in your curriculum that Student Affairs can develop programs to support that outside of the classroom. The students at the end of the day will be able to get a second transcript. So not a transcript of their academic courses, but a transcript of their co-curriculars that show their leadership competency, their communication skills. And so again, we're working with industry and career services and what that'll look like. But I think we'll be seeing some movement this year, so that's one thing to have on your radar. And then for the final part of my update, I've just got COVID, and I'll leave Q&A for that. So where are we on all of this? We are working diligently and looking at where we are in the city, where we are in the county, where we are in the state, where our legislation and our executive orders allow us to do things and not do things. So we're strongly encouraging masks indoors. We're going to encourage that for students. We're going to put out some new guidance from my office about classroom expectations. So a statement you can put in your syllabus will come out today, encouraging masks. Encouraging, I think it was from engineering, we had a suggestion about some sort of quiz on the FAQ about COVID. Now, we didn't think it would be appropriate to do a quiz in your class just about that. But if you want to put any of that in your syllabus and then do a quiz over your syllabus, we always think that's a good pedagogical tool for students to read their syllabi. So you can have your discretion in doing that. So mask statement, we will put out information about seating charts, quarantining, kind of the chain of command, what's going to happen. So who students will report things to, who you will report things to, all that is coming out today. In addition, Johnny Stevens, who's the interim president at Center for Health Sciences, he's leading the pandemic response team. So there's 5 of us from OSU, 5 from CHS, and we're together meeting once a week. So we're meeting every Tuesday. We're updating the deans on the information every Wednesday and Thursday, and we're sending a campus communication every Friday. In addition, the dashboard in terms of number of vaccines, testing, positive cases, all that'll start next week, and that'll go up twice a week. So we think we'll have at least 3 communications coming out regularly, giving updates on kind of where we are. I will say it's on everyone's mind, and just know that it's on our mind, and the response team's working hard at this. So I think we didn't have some communication the last couple weeks, and I think we've really ramped up where that was. It wasn't because we weren't thinking about all of this. We were just trying to line everything up, and so I think we'll have a lot more communication. But as you have questions, if you're sending them within your leadership structure, it's coming to us as well. And so any questions that you have, the Poke-a-thon is the vaccine incentive campaign for students, and that's going really well. We've seen quite a few. I've only seen week 1 numbers, but I was pleasantly surprised with how many students had updated and uploaded their vaccine status. So those numbers look good. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to tell it, but I think you're 1% off of first place college-wide. So I think it's Arts and Sciences is leading you by 1%, but it's getting close. We have our CARES team in place, so I know Randy and Lance are working on that, and so all those structures that were in place last year are still there. HVAC is still running, the high filtration, all of those things are still going on. Those were kind of my main things, but I want to give a little bit of time if you guys have specific questions for me. It doesn't have to be about COVID. In fact, great if it's not. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
The new syllabus attachment is coming out today?
Coming out today, yep. We were finalizing, we had one more piece that came out of the meeting yesterday. We were sending it yesterday, but it will go out today.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On our research students, can we offer that we pay to work in our labs? Can we offer incentives, like pay incentives for them to, one group to get a vaccine? For example, if I have a student that is going to be working around a lot of people a lot, there's a lot of benefits of having them vaccinated, so we don't have to worry about them social distancing as much. I mean, could we offer more money to one student over another?
I'm going to get back to you. I'm meeting with Brandy Hancock and legal at 11, so let me see what she says. I feel like it's right on that gray. We're offering the incentives already, college and university wide, so I don't necessarily see a problem, but let me get back to you with something definitive. Make sure anything right now, we're just really making sure we're running it by legal just in case. If anyone saw yesterday, the Oklahoman put out a story, an inaccurate story about the legislation on mask mandates. They didn't include the part about the executive order. It's the executive order that really ties our hands that we can't require the masks. The legislation actually said that we could, if we just made it for everyone, not just unvaccinated. So if it's caused a bunch of stir on social media, but it was an inaccurate article.
All right, thank you very much.
All right,
Jeanette.
thank you guys.
All right, well, we have a big year ahead of us, but we've had a big year as well. So I want to kind of quickly go through the State of the Union as we typically do each year. I'll shut this guy off. And again, we continue to look at our land grant mission. We serve the state as a public research institution, and now the only one in the Big 12 pretty soon. But I also want to know that you to see we've put out extraordinary people over time. We're going to have our Hall of Fame banquet. It's going to be at the OSU Discovery in Oklahoma City this year, and we're honoring both classes, the 2020 class and the 2021 class. But if you look at the extraordinary people on here, it's quite amazing. Rear Admiral Wynn was in the Vietnam War and was at like 7 or 8 years old, was shot and played dead for days before he could get out. And now he's one of the highest cybersecurity people in the world, and now leading the Pentagon's effort for the Navy. Christine Altendorff is the director of all of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers facilities around the world. And she's right here from Oklahoma. I talked to her yesterday on the phone. She's excited about coming back and these kinds of things. We're honoring 2 professors from Texas A&M. It just so happens. And but some really great people. I talked with Matt Perry also. He heads up the Azure group for Microsoft. And so these are really extraordinary people, and we're going to be really proud to honor them. Let's see if this thing works. If we look at the fall enrollment updates, you'll see that this fall 2021, our freshmen, our new freshmen are up. So new freshmen, the dark orange there, are students who just came from high school and are starting college. And then we have the transfer students who may have gone to community college or transferred in from another university. And then we have pre-CEAT. So actually pre-CEAT is smaller than pre-COVID times, but it's the success rate of the pre-CEAT kids have been fantastic. So we're happy about that. We're getting more highly qualified students, and the kids who are coming into pre-CEAT are also succeeding at a really high level, much higher than we would have ever expected. Kids who met the qualifications of pre-CEAT prior to us creating pre-CEAT, usually 50% of them didn't last a year or two at the university. And now we're talking about 90-some% of them are staying past the first year. And 82% are transferring into our college. You notice also 23.5% women. This is the highest percentage in our college's history. In some categories, if you look at the data, it's 25%, but if we look at the whole pool, it's about 23.5%. That's very good and rising a couple percent from our previous high. It's about 38% are minority students, 13% are first gen. And transfer isn't that much different from that, but if we look at transfer, we see about the same in women and Hispanic. So this looks good. And we're welcoming virtually transfer students from China. So the Chinese students that we brought on, well, 50 of them in fire protection, last year we had 9. They can't travel here because of Chinese restrictions. And so they're actually paying full out-of-state tuition and everything to go to school at Oklahoma State virtually. And our fire protection faculty, I see some of you here today, they're teaching like the second shift. So they're teaching at night, I think, right? Is that right? Okay, so they're like second shift faculty. Our 4-year graduation rates have changed dramatically as well. So the overall enrollment in our college is dropping, not because we don't have enough students, it's because they're actually graduating faster. Okay, so if we look at just taking architecture out because it's a 5-year degree, our numbers have changed just over the last 4 or 5 years, up 20%, 20 percentile. And so we're graduating 1,000 people and we're bringing in 900. And before we were bringing in 700 or 800 and we were graduating 600. So we were building up enrollments. So that's why you see this little, we implemented, Burns Hargis put in this Finish in 4 campaign, and we changed the way scholarships function. And then we phased out the professional school rules, which are 40-year-old rules that no other school really adopted, but we had. And then the immigration policy issues we had with grad students over the last few years, all of these have kind of helped lead us to what looks like lower enrollments, but our actual student credit hours we teach are pretty close to the same. And where do our students come from? Every one of those dots represents a student. And so from all across North America, the average ACT in CEAT this year is about 27.3. That's down a little bit from last year, but we don't have ACTs really. The kids last year couldn't take them, so they were using their ACTs from the sophomore year to submit to get into the university. But still quite a bit higher than OSU's in general. And you can see 35% of our freshman class is in the top 10% of their high school class. This engineering freshman, if we look at what this is kind of looking like, we've got Amanda Williams has been working on our recruiting across campus, the yield between kids who are they're apply and then they are admitted and then they actually enroll. So the yield is people who we admitted, we invited to be at OSU, and how many actually show up. In our college, at 40.9% is the highest at OSU of any college. And the typical OSU is about 35% yield on that curve. We've got 99 new CEAT scholars this fall. So these are kids typically with ACTs above 30, a lot of leadership behind them in high school. And for the first time in our history, there are more women in this group than men. 51% of the CEAT scholars are women this year. It's going to be fantastic. It's a watershed year really for us. 136 kids in Summer Bridge. Jordan, I know, has done a fantastic job with a lot of other people, a lot of help, but to get the Summer Bridge to be a huge success this year. We really broke the bank in scholarships this year, and we will break it again this year. So more than 3.3 million, that's probably more than any other 2 colleges offers. And we'll probably break 4 million this year. And retained freshmen, 88.1. Last year we went over 90%, that's our goal. But they're not all in the bank yet. We don't know. We always have kids show up in the first week, so the numbers aren't completely in, but we think it'll be around that. How many kids did we graduate? So here we're still looking at the sheer amount of people we graduate in engineering far outweighs everything else we do. Engineering technology had a big year because construction engineering technology had a big year. Okay? And Heather tells me it's probably not quite going to be that crazy this year. Okay? Also, just over time, if we look at 11, 12, all the way to 2021, almost every department is up in graduates. And substantially up. But we've also increased our faculty size. You remember that we were going to try to get 50 faculty hired in 5 years, right? 50 in 5? Well, we got 50 in 9. Okay, so we, but we took 26% budget cuts on in the process. But we've actually increased our faculty substantially, and we've listened to the departments too. Some of the departments wanted more professors of practice, people who come back from industry and are able to teach senior design and do more practice-oriented courses so that the faculty can focus more on graduate or research or theoretical-based courses. And I think that's been quite successful. We've got new faculty and promotions. So these are the faculty who have promotion. We should give them all a round of applause. It takes a big effort to get over that tenure hump. It's not a given. This is probably the hardest 6 years of someone's life. And we had one promotion to full professor, so Dr. Weiwa Sheng went to full professor, and that's been a fantastic, his work in robotics and so forth has been fantastic. Now we welcome new faculty. So we have new faculty in a lot of different areas, in civil, electrical, BAE. I'll point out we have a new department head, Mari Chin. Is Mari here? Okay, so Mari Chin, so she adds she's the new department head in MAE, and more new hires. Some of them came last year. So if we look at Joseph and Katerina, they came last year, but they weren't here on the day of this event, so we're putting their pictures up this year. We welcome a lot of new staff. So as most of you know, our college is not just an academic college. We have substantial research and we have substantial extension operations. Roughly 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So about 26 million in each of these areas of our college. And so we have staff, hundreds of staff who work all across campus and in 77 counties to serve the state with our land grant mission. And so we have, similarly, we have staff, new staff in all of these different areas as well. And some of them all look like Pistol Pete. I want to talk briefly, some of you may have heard this already, but the state has accepted a proposal that we generated to increase permanent funding for our college. And it's a lot of money. Right now the state roughly gives us about $4.9 million a year. Of our $80 million budget, about 4.5 or 4.9 of that comes from the state. We've convinced the state now to increase our funding by an additional $5 million. So more than doubling the funding that the state provides. Now, that takes us from 10 out of 85 million now. It's still not, they don't fund our whole college, but they help us, they're helping us a lot. And this is for growth. They're expecting us, because of the needs in the state, the Department of Commerce, the Chancellor, all of those people push hard for us to see this increase in funding. In addition, they provide an increase in funding to all of the other state schools who provide us transfer students. And of course, they gave some to the Red School too. But we're expected to increase our enrollment by 500 to 1,000 students in the next 5 years with this funding. And the proposal, the original proposal, was for twice as much as they actually did. So they're going to be looking at, if we meet these metrics, is it possible for them to invest further? Because what we really need is, we need about 3,000 engineers being graduated in Oklahoma per year, and we're not even anywhere close to that. So we're going to keep working on this. So the strategic planning that many of you have been talking about, this is really the strategic planning about, as we're putting the college strategic plan together, we've been actually given permanent ongoing money to implement, you know, a new normal for our college. And so we're looking forward to doing that. When we look at this, it's kind of off the screen. It looks like 3% or something, but again, the freshman class is very high, and the new freshmen, if you just count new freshmen itself, it's close to 25% women this year. In some departments, we don't see as high as others, so we're really pushing to continue that, and also in our recruiting efforts to continue. There's a lot of talent out there that isn't being tapped, and if we're going to try to increase the college by 500 to 1,000 students, we have got to find the talent that just isn't coming to the table. Demographically, that talent is there. It's just not coming to the table. When we look at the pre-CEAT students, there are 205 students this fall in pre-CEAT. 99 of them are new freshmen. So some of them are transfer students. Some of them are in their third semester in pre-CEAT because they weren't quite ready when they crossed the line last spring. So, but they're still, and we have great advisors for pre-CEAT, and they're working on transferring, getting these kids across the line. But if you look at who's in pre-CEAT, it's not really what Randy and I thought it would be years ago. It's actually quite amazing. It's only a couple percentage are there because of their ACT. Most of them are because they're not math ready. You know, so 68% of them are in pre-CEAT because they're graduated high school without being qualifying for calc. You know, 11% of the students choose pre-CEAT. They had an ACT above 24, but they chose pre-CEAT as a major. And about 20% transfer students. But the success rate at 92.1% retention, that's higher than our college a year ago, and higher than any college at the university. That's amazing, because a few years ago that was between 50 and 60%. And 82% of them are staying with CEAT. We set some benchmarks in our last strategic plan in which we wanted to have freshman retention above 90%. Well, last year we went above 90%, substantially above 90%. This year we'll be back to 88%, 88 or 89%. You know, we wanted to get more kids, with 45% of our kids graduating in 4 years. Well, we did that for engineers and engineering technology, but when you count our whole college, including architecture, we've got a ways to go. It means that engineering and engineering technology need to get to about 48 or 50% to get the whole college to average this. And our goal took into account that we have 5-year degrees as well. CEAT scholarships have been fantastic. We will have about 400 CEAT scholars now, if you count all the different kind of scholars programs we have, including research scholars. And graduating in 4 years, we've been trying to get this number to 4.5 years, the average time to graduation. It used to be more than 5. So we've increased the amount of female faculty. Our non-resident group is still strong yet, and our freshman ACT scores are substantially higher than they were in 12 or 17. So the people who are populating your class, they belong there. And so it's up to you as faculty to find a way to motivate them and get them excited about what they're doing. We've increased our rankings. If you look at our rankings back in 2013, on the top here, I guess it's off the screen, OSU's off the screen, and the red one is OU. Now OU has stayed at the same place, and here's where our rankings are. So our reputation is rising, and it's because of you. It's the work you're doing, it's the research you're doing, it's the students we're graduating, it's how people look at OSU across the country. Interesting thing here is that, of course, NSF through HERD, the HERD data, looks and ranks universities on public research money. And back in 2013, OSU, OU, Kansas State, and University of Arkansas, we were all roughly the same. We were all within just a few different in rank. And you see over the last few years that Arkansas and OSU have separated themselves and risen in the ranking from NSF, and the other two universities have slowly declined. Research metrics, Chuck will talk a little bit more about these kinds of things, but we broke the record this year for the amount of research we've ever done in this college over all time. And so it's a fantastic testament to all of you, and this year looks even stronger. So a few years ago, 8 or 9 years ago, we lost 2 very large grants, about $14 million in research per year, and we've brought all of that back and some. And so that's fantastic news, and that engages graduate students, it creates entrepreneurial activities, it engages our undergraduate research scholars, it makes all of us, it raises our expectations and our reputation across the country. Research leaders, we had a goal to increase our research infrastructure by about $3 million a year. Well, we've raised it by $38 million over the last 4 years, and I'm only counting a small part of Discovery. The Discovery building is depending on who's estimating, it's between $75 and $92 million in infrastructure for our college. And so we've done great. We've had 14 NSF Career Awards, NASA Young Investigators, ONR, DOE, multiple agencies. It's just really important. It's this diversified amount of research we're doing is the key for a lot of the things we do. Nothing that we lose would catastrophically hurt us anymore. And that's really important. Now, I want to point out a couple of the superstars every year that's kind of like the gold star list. So Andy Arena broke the bank this year in research expenditures at more than $1.5 million for an individual faculty as PI. And then Mileva and Gare in petroleum, people are hitting home runs as well. Good job. I see Gare's here in the room. But we've also had more than ever in this category of $500,000 to $1 million with Jamie and Prem and Jim Stein and Robert Taylor and Ty and Iman Farouk. And if you ever have a chance to visit Iman's his bees, okay, go out there and check out his bees. They're not always there, so sometimes they're out buzzing around. So. But we've also had, you just see the amount of different faculty who are engaged across multiple departments with major research. And what our goal was to get the average faculty above $200,000 a year, because that's enough to fund a working research group of multiple graduate students, PhD students, and so forth. And that's kind of where our peers seem to lie, our aspirational peers seem to lie above that level. But we've seen all of these faculty are really contributing to the big research infrastructure and push of our college as well. Because we remember we're one of 2 research institutions, recognized research institutions in our state. So here, again, Chuck will talk a little bit more detail, but our goal was to hit 26 million before fiscal year 22. We just started fiscal year 22, but we already exceeded that in fiscal year 21. We've got additional tenure track faculty, so we've made some progress in hiring faculty in in money from the state. We've looked up how many, we had a question from the state, from the regents, about how many citations our faculty have. We lost track somewhere around 500,000. Okay, so it could be much higher than this, but we just use Google Scholar to pick up our top, most of the faculty. But these are the amount of articles that get cited by other universities and other research programs to reference the background of their work. We formed an external women's advisory board. This is going to help us in recruiting and also in any of our DEI and industry-based connections. All of these people come from industry, and they're giving their time back to us so that I can better understand the things that promote women in engineering. We had a competition this year to build a crazy vehicle. So we had multiple companies come in and wanted us to start thinking more about sustainable energy, to teach more of our students about teamwork that's necessary to do this. No one person designs one of these vehicles. So we had almost 24 different students working on this vehicle, and it ended up, so it's a relatively clean energy vehicle. They drove it around out at the airfield, and now it's parked in Endeavor. If you want to go see it, I think it's on the 3rd floor of Endeavor. And you can see it. They'll probably tear it apart this year and redo it again with different power options. We've had a lot of major research areas in unmanned systems, sustainable energy. We've got lots of faculty who work in these areas. So as we're moving forward in our strategic planning, we've got to think about how do we change the paradigm. We get the amount of students we have because the university recruits the way they recruit, because our faculty participate in what they participate in. So we get what we get from what we do. But if we're going to get 500 or 1,000 more students, and they could be graduate or undergraduate students, we've got to decide to change some things. We've got to decide to create research institutes or clusters. We've got to decide to put a bigger emphasis into sustainable energy or aerospace or infrastructure or something. We've got to decide to do that and then figure out a plan by which that draws in a new generation of students interested in these collaborative efforts in our college. And this can span from architecture, architectural engineering, and technology into engineering. It can be all of these things together under different umbrellas, multiple umbrellas. When we look at some of the things that's going on, we've got some big efforts going on with Jim Stein in chip design and the next generation of secure hardware. With a lot of things that's going on at the Cooper Lab for transportation, for national transportation, but as well as for state transportation. And of course, the kinds of things we're doing for NASA with the NASA space grant, but also the Air Force research that crosses over into NASA. Some people ask, well, we just have these couple of buildings. They just know we have these couple of buildings. And then some of you are out in FPP and you think those are the couple of buildings we have. But on campus, the college has about 26 buildings. Okay, so it has all those little blue dots. And these are the ones that the academic people see. All right, there's some out on North Campus that mechanical and industrial engineering people see. And then it's more out there that chemical and FPP and everything else. But that whole cluster out there is almost entirely occupied by our employees, our graduate students, and our undergrads. And in addition to that, we have the fly field, the OSU fly field. It's about 12 miles to the east. We have Richmond Hills, which is on the northeast side of town. And we have a collaboration there with Boeing and several others. We do some propulsion work out there and so forth. But now we also have the Discovery Building in Oklahoma City and the Helmrich Building in Tulsa. These are world-class research places where we can collaborate with industry and teach and learn and conduct research all at the same time. The Discovery update, we kind of announced that Discovery at this meeting a year ago. Baker Hughes has signed a 10-year lease with us, so they handle 52% of all of the overhead of the entire building. So it really relieves the university of a lot of expenses related to the building. Tinker, we expect a Tinker partnership right now. They've cleared a bunch of hurdles they have. We expect by September that they'll have about 30 of their software and advanced manufacturing people in there, and those people will then take on interns from OSU. And OSU, our college, we will provide the seating and the places for those people to operate, but a big chunk of the fourth floor will now become Air Force-based programming, advanced materials, 3D manufacturing. The new product development center will open a pod there as well. We'll have a huge K through 12 effort going on there too. So we just landed a $6 million DoD, so Department of Defense, STEM effort. That's about half of that is going to happen in Oklahoma City among the large school districts that are there. And so that will also be located in Discovery as well. So we've got a lot of enterprise going on there already. Just in the short term, we've owned it. We're still waiting for signage from university marketing to take the Baker Hughes signs down. But patience, I have patience. We have to think about what are our next programs. So the rest of this is really just kind of start thinking about what do we teach down there? What faculty would like to work down there? We can provide faculty great workspace and research group space for we already have, Jamie has his counter UAS group is already forming down there, and with Victoria. And so there's a lot of things going on. And there's been conversations also with Baker Hughes on how we collaborate with them on pursuing grants as well. So what are the opportunities ahead of us? This summer, we taught almost, it wasn't 900 plus, it was 897. All right. Students across the state in K through 12 hands-on training with using near peer. So this has to do with college kids crawling around the floor teaching science to little kids, to kids in the K through 12 sector. And it was fantastic. We had more than 90 kids per camp, I think, in Ardmore. We even ran one in, what's it, Wilson or something? Yes. It's a town I never heard of, but it has a Boys and Girls Club, and 90 kids there, 100 or something, in Wilson, Oklahoma. And I think the whole town went. And, but the parents have just glowed about this. The kids, parents afterwards told me, my kid did not want to go to a summer camp, especially because it would take up time from him playing. And then he went to the summer camp and he didn't want to leave at the end of the week. Like, how do I sign up for the next week? And so I think it says a lot about our students, engaging them in understanding how math and science are used in everyday life. And almost all of the exercises there are exactly that. They're not theoretical. They get them to think and compete on different things to do that go faster, how far can you shoot an egg to hit your teacher, whatever it happens to be. But they figure it out, and we teach them that all of this has to do with math and science, and it's predictable. And I think that gets them excited. We have to have a vision for the future, so over the next month or two, we're going to spend a lot more time in kind of vision casting where we can go with additional funding, with our rise in research, with more enrollment. What does this free us up to go? So we have to answer the questions, where do we go from here? Now that all of our children have grown up. That's an old song for some of you. So, what do we need to do our mission? Okay, and I always talk about being aspirational. All right, I don't think you can read the Dilbert back there, but it says, I don't like the optics of your plan. It's the only plan that can work. Should I change it to something that looks good but won't work? excellent idea. You might have management in potential. When we think about, we live in a world which becomes more diverse all the time, and Oklahoma is no exception. When we look at the big school districts, the 52,000 kids that are in Oklahoma City, Mid-Del, Millwood school districts, 78% of all of those 52,000 students are minorities. 78%. That is the future. The next 12 years, that's the population that's going to be coming to our college. We have to accept that and work on it. We've got to understand that our country is changing, our state is changing, the opportunities for new ideas are changing. And they come from people of all different understandings of the world. And it makes design stronger. The more people you bring into a design, the more people think of the crazy stuff that could go right or wrong. They look at the economics differently. They look at social justice differently. They look at environmental issues differently. That helps us make better designs. And that's really what we do in engineering. So we have to think about all of these kinds of things. And we have to remember that all of them aren't the same. So when we think about, we have more mental health issues at the university now than ever before. How much of it is caused by COVID? How much of it is caused by pressure, some other kind of pressures in young kids' lives? We don't really, that's not really easily quantifiable. But we've provided more support for those kids across campus so they can get over that little hump. So suicide isn't the thing they think of. They instead think of, how am I going to graduate in 4 years? How am I going to get to the great job that I want? How am I going to change the world? So we need to get them to think about how they can impact the world in a positive way, rather than that little thing that's hit them locally and that at their age they can't quite push through it. They need help. We have to find out a way in which to help them. So the behavioral health team on campus has lots of resources to help them. And it could be that we have students who have a language barrier with us. They've gotten all the way to college, but they still struggle with language. We can help them with that. You know, again, investing in this next thing we do. I keep putting up slides about every 12 slides or something about this because I want to keep nailing it into your head. We have the potential to grow. The answer isn't no. The answer is give us a good idea. One that you're willing to take some ownership with or to work with others. This is going to be a team game. No one person can do any of this stuff. So we have to form clusters and teams and groups of faculty and so forth to be successful there. When we look at these Oklahoma City school districts, the future, the kids we're going to recruit with this $5 million a year, you know, you look at some of these schools, they're 8th grade math. That's the ones who have 8th grade math competency in these schools. I was stunned by this, and so I went and met with the superintendents of these schools, of the school districts. And the overwhelming thing they told me was the kids start later. That the school you went to, when they got to 1st grade, they could already read the Go Dog Go book. They could count, you know, to 50. They could do maybe some, they certainly knew all their ABCs, and probably could even do some writing of their letters. The kids in these school districts show up in 1st grade and don't have those skills yet. So we're working, so the school districts are working on the pre-K programs and so forth, but we have to understand that that's the paradigm there. Summer can help. Every time we go out, those kids go out for summer, they regress, right? They go backwards. If we can engage them in the summer and just keep them where they left their last grade when they enter the next one, within a few years they'll make up these couple of years of lost time. But we have to push that because the school districts can't push it, the state's not pushing it, but they tell us if we provide the incentives and the direction, and we can do it in STEM. We can teach them that STEM is everywhere. Engineering is everywhere. And then we have, where do we go from here? We look at, we have a potential to look at energy in all of its forms. The Strategic Advisory Board for our PET, the Petroleum Engineering, they recommend that we look at all of the other energy sources, not just oil and gas. They believe the future of energy is not oil and gas. It will contain partly oil and gas, but solar, wind, geothermal, nuclear, it all has to be on the table for us to meet our needs and to have a clean environment. And so when we look at the growing aerospace in our state, it's fantastic, but it doesn't have enough engineers to do the work. So this is why we've lost some companies not coming here, is because we're not creating enough of the talent that these companies need. And it's not just about drones. It's about, as Jamie or Andy or anybody would tell you, it's also about commercial aircraft, it's solar aircraft, it's space. This generation that we're teaching is going to Mars. You may not come back from Mars, they'll be there. Infrastructure, you just saw yesterday, earlier this week, the Senate passed the infrastructure, $1.2 billion infrastructure bill. That is not law yet. It still has to go to the House. And now the Senate is discussing a much larger package of $3 trillion. Sorry, it was 1.2 trillion, not a billion. But this involves more clean energy, more ways that transportation. For Oklahoma, this bill would create rail transit between Kansas City and Oklahoma City again. It hasn't, we have more. I heard on the radio this morning, we had better rail service in 1880 than we do today. The only train you can take out of Oklahoma right now goes to Fort Worth. They used to go in all directions. Advanced automation, advanced manufacturing is a very big issue in Tulsa and across the state. They really are looking at, we can't compete with the Asian countries in labor costs. But automation can make up for that labor cost to reshore jobs to the United States. We need to think better and use our brains more and not our brawn. And that's where automation is going to come into a lot of things. I use the example with little kids about, all the vaccines. I hope everyone here gets a vaccine. If you don't have one already, get two, all right? But that wouldn't have been possible without engineers. You can come up in a laboratory at Pfizer or the CDC or something with a vaccine. But to put up a factory in 3 months that can make 1 billion doses seems to be crazy. And now you're talking about hundreds of billions of these things. It's a crazy amount of doses that have to be created. Trials and to run this all of this requires systems engineering, it requires manufacturing, it requires pharmaceutical expertise, it requires everything that engineers provide. And without our strength, and we did it as the Americans did it. And so that's really important. And we're relying on largely the ones we created. The Europeans are relying on AstraZeneca, the ones they helped create. Now, the Russians with the Sputnik and the Sino one, I don't know what about those ones. But we did a good job, and those things are available, and they can keep our campus safe. If the students get these vaccines in the next couple of weeks, we will be substantially without COVID for the rest of the year if we just get people vaccinated. And finally, I just want to wish you all a great 2021 and 22. This fall is still going to be challenged with masks and pushing and helping students get vaccines. We're still going to have issues. Okay, we don't know when study abroad will start again. We don't know when we will be able to go to non-virtual conferences. All right, but we do have to get back to some new normal. And that face-to-face interaction with students, I urge you, is important. I don't think any of you can look into one of the students' the Zoom screen where the picture of the student is a meme and tell whether that kid understands what you're talking about on a screen. It's very difficult to use this Socratic understanding to look someone in the eye and find out if they understand what you're talking about with this equation or this design problem. It's very difficult to do that in engineering. I do believe you can teach American history online. I do believe that. There's lots of things we can teach online. But quite honestly, engineering, architecture are not really easy to do that way. And that's why University of Phoenix or nobody else offers engineering degrees, because it's hard. So we want to be in person. We want to talk to the students. As faculty, keep a social distance from them. It's okay, it's good. It keeps you safe, it keeps them safe, but being able to look at them and talk to them, you know, use a board. Have them put their ideas up on a chalkboard instead of a piece of paper on the desk. Okay, so you can be 4 or 3 or 6 feet away from them. It's okay. But having them talk to you, just as the provost said, we know this freshman class, almost 2 years of living in their parents' basement, or it's unlike any previous ones. They could have all kinds of social problems coming out of this because they haven't had, you know, think about what you did when you were a junior and senior in high school and the interactions you had with other human beings. Okay, stop thinking of those things. And then, but that's an experience they haven't been able to have. They haven't had these kind of goofy discussions and, you know, these kinds of things just haven't happened. And our students, our sophomores now, they didn't get that experience last year either much. Maybe some in the spring semester, but we didn't have a lot of in-person events. So we need to get back to in-person, but we need to do it safely. And the more people we get vaccinated, the better we're going to be able to interact with the whole campus sooner. I look forward to taking the students over abroad in the courses that I lead, study abroad. But you know, that doesn't happen unless we clean this thing up. And we can. The tools are with us to do it. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to, who's next on the... We'll take the questions afterwards, but let's have Ed come on up and do the extension.
Thank you, sir. You didn't even have a mic.
There is one right here if you want to use it. It's already set up. Check that. Is this the one you have? There you go.
There you go.
All right, so
Thank you, sir.
they said use this, but that one seems more better.
Good morning. Every time it gets to extension, everybody leaves. You can't leave. Some of you can. If you don't know me, I'm Ed Kirtley. I'm the Assistant Dean for Engineering Extension. I'd like to take just a few minutes to give you an update on what's going on in Extension. And if you have any questions, I do appreciate all of you being here. Those of you that have masks on, thank you for that. So it's, I really thought we would never be back where we are today with COVID, but we are. And it's just, nobody would choose to be here, but we're here. We're going to make the best of it. So, real quickly, the mission statement for Engineering Extension, why we exist, you can read that, but I will tell you just in a few words, our job is to take what you do in research and in classes and take it out to people where they can use it in their everyday life, both in municipal government and manufacturing. Any skill that you're teaching, any best practice, any new procedure, it's our job to take it out to those folks that can use it. If you go back 150 years to the start of the land-grant mission for the land-grant university, the purpose was economic development, and that continues today. The things we do in Extension, there's really two, I would say, large goals or purposes for what we do. The first is the quality of life, to improve the quality of life of the people in Oklahoma and around the world. And the second is to support economic development in Oklahoma. So that's really the core mission of Extension. We are Engineering Extension. You can be proud that your Engineering Extension is in all 77 counties in every continent in the world. So the Dean mentioned Wilson, Oklahoma. Can anybody tell me where this is? It's in Oklahoma. We have a prize, actually, if you know.
Is it Wilson?
And if somebody knows, I'm going to be shocked.
Is it Wilson?
No, but it's close. It's close. Folks, every day, the face of CEAT, especially in rural Oklahoma, is Engineering Extension. That is the Merck in Kenton, Oklahoma. You probably don't even know where Kenton, Oklahoma is. Does anybody even know where Kenton, Oklahoma is? Yeah, the fire people, well, yeah. The panhandle guy knows. Yeah. Kenton, Oklahoma is as far west as you can go in the state of Oklahoma. Literally, you can walk 1 block from this building and be in New Mexico. Every day, our engineering men and women go to places like this in Oklahoma. This is a picture of airmen in the Japanese Defense Force. Our people and our materials train the Japanese Defense Force. This is McMurdo Station. That's about as far south, that's even further south than Broken Bow. And we train, and they use our training materials to train emergency responders that are at McMurdo Station. And in some cases, we only go to North Campus. This is Dr. Robert Taylor and his students that are working on something called the Neptune Separator. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. So the point I want to make is Engineering Extension, just like engineering, is everywhere. In all 77 counties, in every state in the union, and on every continent around the world. So we have a face, we have a presence everywhere in the world. And it's not just Extension, it is CEAT's Extension. It's the college has a presence all around the world. So I want to go through our units and just quickly highlight some of their achievements. I know time is important here. CEAT, we have Extension units that go off campus and deliver, but we also have some units that support you in the things that you do. And CEAT is one of them. And I'm going to mention their mission here because I think it's really about the heart of what we do in Extension, is to remain flexible and resilient in the face of challenge and change. Isn't that what engineering is all about? And that's their mindset about supporting the things that you do. Your faculty, your researchers, that's what they do. And they do it very well, by the way. This year, and it's a crazy year for all of us, they invested in virtual desktop infrastructure so that our students aren't locked to a computer lab, that they, from their apartment, from a lounge in Engineering North, wherever they are, they have access to software that will help them do things like simulations. The support of OSU Discovery, it is an incredible building, but part of that is transitioning to our infrastructure, to our way of doing things, and they're working on that. They support CEAT through a cadre of staff and students. Our staff, the CEAT staff, are wonderful mentors, and every year they have a group of students that they mentor to support you. Most of those students are your students that are working part-time, and they do a great job. And this year they won the CEAT Outstanding, one of the units that won the Outstanding Achievement Award. I want to take just a minute and go back a few months. I think it was April of last year. Anybody remember April? You may have nightmares about April. But you remember when one day we were teaching in the classroom and the next day the dean said, guess what? We're going to go all virtual. I know Randy remembers that. Remember that? And the change and the impact it had? Well, there were 3 support groups, and that involved all of us, everybody, faculty. I don't know how you did it. It was a great transition, but there were 3 support groups that really made that happen. CEAT was one of them. If you work for CEAT, stand up.
I think we're going to start for working.
Pat Wheeler, you and your team at facilities, stand up. These guys and see online learning. Nathan, you and your folks stand up. Literally overnight made great great things happen, and I'm very proud that CEAT was part of that. One of our units is the Local Technical Assistance Program. Ours was one of the original LTAPs in the United States. This year, like most of our other extension programs, transitioned to virtual training almost overnight to meet the needs of transportation, local, municipal transportation. These are the guys that maintain the roads and design the transportation system, the county, and also the state DOT. They're in all 77 counties. Now, they have a Rhodes Scholar recognition. Now, that's not like graduate students in England. These are county transportation workers that go through a very rigorous set of classes. And at the end, we recognize them. We call them the Rhodes Scholars. And we had 3 graduates. And then our manager, Aaron Wright, was picked to be the co-chair of the partnership work group. And that's really the leadership element of that national organization. Extension isn't just extension people. We're very happy that, and proud really, that our faculty also contribute and is a key part of extension. Norm DeLotte is with LTAP. He's our director and helps make sure that what we're doing is up to date, that it's the best practices, and introducing new practices and procedures. So Norm, thank you for your help. New Product Development Center. This is led by Dr. Robert Taylor and works closely with MAE faculty. Their job is truly economic development, is to support small and medium-sized manufacturing throughout the state and inventors to improve manufacturing operations and impact the economy. They had an EDA CARES program grant. EDA is economic development, supporting Oklahoma companies recovering from the pandemic. Now that's a little bit unusual, but isn't that what engineers do? That's one of the things we support. The Neptune grease separator. I want to. Any of you from California? One person. You've probably read in the news, California's having a little bit of a water problem. Like there is no water. So a local inventor, Robert and his team have been working with them. They've developed this thing called the Neptune grease separator. And I don't know, some faculty have helped with that. Dan, did any of your faculty help with that? I don't remember. I think it was Robert and the engineers at MPDC, and then some graduate and undergraduate students here developed a separator that takes wastewater out of kitchens, goes ahead and cleans it, does all the things that need to be done so it's potable water. Now potable means you could drink it. Now I don't know if I'd want to, you would bravely drink that water, but can be used to flush toilets. Now if you think that doesn't sound like much, but say a Marriott hotel with 1,000 rooms and everything out of the bathtubs and sinks went through a Neptune separator and went back to flush the toilets. If you're in California, that's a pretty significant device. And it was tested this last week by the EPA. The EPA said this works. So that's, and I think there's going to be something new called the Taylor toilet after that. I'm not sure. And this is the Neptune separator. And again, I want to emphasize this is being done by your students. This isn't a team of 30 engineers that's coming up with this. This is some of our engineers from MPDC working with your students doing this design work. They don't have to wait till they graduate to do design work that makes a difference in our world. This is a program you've heard me talk about before. This is the aircraft transportation system. It is now starting to be tested at the Ardmore Airport. There is a trolley that runs underneath here that will go out on the taxiway, pick up an airplane, bring it right into the gate. Opportunity to save a lot of money in fuel, to do it quicker and more efficiently. So this is actually a collaboration with a company from Poland, and they're starting to test it. Fire service training. Fire service training goes back to 1931. It's one of our statutory extension programs. In other words, state law says that at Oklahoma State, you'll deliver these programs. While we were all hunkered down in by June of last year, fire service training was back in the field delivering all their courses and doing it safely. They provided over 3,300 courses during COVID and reached over 33,000 emergency responders. And that's pretty good. When everybody else was staying home for good reason, fire service training was out responding our states, and not only our state's emergency responders, but from other states also. In cooperation with the College of Education and Human Sciences, they've introduced a fitness program for emergency responders that's now being taught around the country. They began expansion of the Fire and Emergency Services Training Center. That's one of our facilities that's out west. And last year, Caroline and her team received over $1 million of grants for training and program expansion, including a new fire truck. The first time we've actually gotten a new fire truck. Most of the time, some fire department donates a fire truck and the wheels are falling off and it still has a horse hitch on it. And this year we actually got a new fire truck. Center for Local Government Technology. Remember I talked about economic development. Part of economic development is also making sure that we have fair and equitable tax assessment in our counties in Oklahoma. Education, including Oklahoma State, misses a lot of money every year because of improper property assessment. Now, I know none of us like our property taxes to go up, but CLGT's role with the CAMA program, well, actually statutorily, is to deliver training and to certify that our local county assessors are doing their job and assessing our property equitably. So this year, again, on a dime, they turned all of their training, which was in person, to virtual. And that was done internal with their staff, some great staff. And they had the highest enrollment ever, and this is virtual training, in the history of CLGT. Last year, they gave 985 certifications, or that's students that completed courses, and 92 advanced certifications. Their mission, their never-ending goal and benefits, is to make sure that the citizens of Oklahoma have consistent, fair, and equitable property appraisals. Now that's a pretty big mission. And when we think of engineering extension, that may not be exactly what we think of, but their folks, Gary Snyder and his folks, are out doing that in all 77 counties. CEAT Marketing, that's like CEAT IT is an internal support group. This year they made the transition of the website and applicant pages to New City. Now, many of you, I think your heart skips when we talk about that, because that's been a little bit of an arduous process. But that's done, and it was done through the COVID, which is amazing. They supported the operations of our incident management team during this time, getting accurate and timely information out. And they did it very well. And during that same time, they initiated a campaign supporting aerospace and aviation programs. Fire Protection Publications, been around since 1935. Is that right, Mike? 1934. Who has the largest or the most active LMS at Oklahoma State University? It's Fire Protection Publications. Fire Protection Publications on their LMS has over 191,000 registered users. That's more users than all of Oklahoma State University campuses combined. During COVID, that included 36,000 new users. This year, their sales exceeded all projections, while other businesses had a downturn. FPP and their staff just kept chugging away to the point that their sales actually increased. Part of that was they sold 64,000 apps for phones in the last 12 months. They continue to be the world's leader in emergency responder training materials, and very proud of the job that they do. Professional development, that's our extension unit that does professional training for engineers, for first responders. This year, it was the 17th year for the HAZWOPER training. They do HAZWOPER training for hospitals and medical facilities. Now, HAZWOPER, that training is how to recognize hazardous and chemical emergencies and how to decon things like that. Every time you saw a picture of the emergency room that was overrun with COVID patients, they were using techniques taught by professional development to those nurses and doctors. That's significant. From the Panhandle all the way to Broken Bow, medical responders in hospitals were using the skills trained by professional development. They also transitioned to Osha Training courses. This was the first time Osha courses had ever been taught virtually, and we were able to shift to the virtual courses. And they supported engineering technology on 2 conferences, mechatronics and fire protection or fire technology. And I think we're getting ready to have the 2nd fire technology conference this fall. IFSAC, this is one of our units that you've seldom heard of, but they're the world's largest accrediting body for fire training, not only college programs, but actual training done by state training agencies. They transitioned to coordinating their meetings. Now keep in mind they have members from 4 continents and time zones from all across the world, from Asia, North America. They transitioned to conducting their meetings, their fall and spring meetings, to virtually. There was no interruption in their operations during COVID. That's quite an accomplishment. And they will tell you that was an accomplishment. They also converted their accreditation site visits to virtual site visits, which those of you that work with ABET can understand that that's a big undertaking also. So finally, just to close, engineering extension, it's our people, some of you, all of you, staff that's not here, helping people in Oklahoma and around the world. And we're very proud to be part of CEAT, and I think we do a terrific job taking the message of CEAT to people all over the world. Any questions? Great. Thank you. Randy.
Okay, Randy Seitzinger, I'm Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. First of all, let me say thank you. We all know what a difficult 2 years we've had. I'm really proud of the job that you have done, our faculty, staff, and students, in terms of keeping us moving forward and the accomplishments we've done. Looking at the data and statistics that the Dean showed you earlier on, to me it's amazing that we continue to meet and exceed the metrics that we set in our strategic planning when COVID was not even something that we thought of remotely, that we keep moving forward, raising the bar, and that's really you. And I really appreciate what you've done, what you do, and what you will continue to do. I am very excited about this academic year. There's lots of positive things, and I'm going to talk about that later on. But we're still dealing with COVID. We all hoped that this fall semester was going to be more of a normal fall semester. And when the planning for the semester was going on last spring, I think there was a lot of optimism. It's like we were past a wave. This was going to be a new world. Things were going to be different in the fall. And then we all know the Delta variant popped up. And along with that, the low vaccination rate in Oklahoma. And both of those are really contributing to another difficult fall semester. So, as Dean Tukowski said, I think the thing that we can all do is get vaccinated. Well, I'm going to harp on that. I really encourage you all to do that personally if you haven't, and for you to encourage your students to do that. That's the thing we can do to move the campus back to a more normal situation in the fall. That's the most important thing we can do. So, what does all of this mean now for our fall semester? We've planned this in a way where we thought the semester was going to be more normal, and now we know that it's not going to be normal. It's a new normal that we're going to be dealing with. So, as you know, we scheduled all of their classes with return to normal seating arrangements. No social distancing in terms of the capacity of classrooms and seating. That was done last fall. That's still in place. And I'm going to give you a caveat. I'm going to go through and kind of talk to you a little bit about the conversations I've heard. We've had these conversations in Instruction Council with the provost and the associate provost. I'm going to pass some information on to you with the caveat that you're going to get some information from the provost this afternoon. And if what they tell you is different than what I tell you, they trump this. So it's a continuing discussion, and so they may revise some of these things from what our discussions have been. So, we're scheduled with no special social distancing requirements in the classrooms. Vaccinations are strongly recommended for all faculty, staff, and students. But as you know, we can't require that. There's a state mandate that says that we cannot make that a requirement on campus. Oklahoma law, and here's all the details, doesn't allow the university to mandate vaccinations nor mandate have a mask mandate. So, but OSU is continuing to follow the recommendations of the CDC to the best that we can and still meet the requirements of our state law. So OSU's encouraging the use of masks indoors, in public, especially in situations in which social distancing is not possible, like in classrooms, or in events and gatherings, and for activities with close contact with others. Masking is recommended even if you are fully vaccinated. And so this is going to be a recommendation we're going to do. It's not a mandate, not a requirement, but a recommendation. And I think continuing the message, if you're not feeling well, don't come to campus. You need to stay home. You may think it's allergies, you may think it's a cold, you may think it's whatever, but the Delta variant is very contagious. And so we want you to stay at home, we want you to continue to get tested, continue to try to protect the overall health of the campus. If you're vaccinated, you're likely not going to have a severe bout of COVID, but it's possible for you to still get the Delta variant, even with the vaccination. So faculty can, and I think should, recommend to students to be vaccinated or to wear a mask. You can do that in your classroom, you can do that in your individual conversations with them, you can do that however you like. You can't require it. You cannot require them to wear a mask while they're in the classroom, or you cannot ask them if they've been vaccinated and ask them to show your vaccination card or to tell you whether they've been vaccinated. That's very clear on that. So please don't do that. We need to follow that. The provost we had some conversations earlier about what we can and can't do, and Tyler, this kind of goes back to your questions, and I think these are being vetted in all kinds of ways across the university. Provost said she was going to get back to you on the question of incentive for employees with pay and graduate students. But what has been clear is the provost said faculty cannot give incentives in their classroom that's tied to academics or vaccinations or mask wearing. So you can't say, if you show me your vaccine card, I'm going to give you 10% bump on an assignment, or I'm going to let you not do this or not do that. The provost's office said we need to separate the academic side of our courses with the vaccine. OSU and CEAT will have campaigns to encourage students to be vaccinated, but that shouldn't be at an individual level with incentives within the class tied to grades. Okay? You are not required to live stream or to record lectures like we did previously, but you may do so. And that's your choice, your discretion. If you think that adds value to your class, if you're concerned that many students are missing class because they're ill or sick, and you're trying to provide them an avenue to stay involved in class, you can do that if you want to, but it's not a requirement from OSU. You can require class attendance. So we're going back to the old policy that faculty are in control. You don't have to, but faculty are in control of class attendance. It can be required if you like, but the caveat there is that, like we always do, there will be an expectation that you make accommodations for students who are sick. And unlike previously, we need to continue to trust what students tell us in that way. We can't ask students for, if they say, hey, I'm not feeling good, I need to go get tested, or I have COVID, or I'm quarantining, we can't require them to bring documentation. They may not be able to get that documentation. And we don't want to encourage students who are sick to come to campus, to make that decision. I'm going to come to class because I'm afraid that I'm going to get an absence that's going to hurt my grade. So you can require attendance, but you need to be flexible in accommodating students who tell you that they're sick. And just in general, flexibility is still very important to all issues related to COVID. So the other, another issue that I've heard about is the issue of in-person office hours, in-person advising. And the stance from the provost's office is that if a course is scheduled as an in-person class, faculty are expected to have in-person office hours. So you need to provide students who wish to meet with you in person to be able to do so. That doesn't mean that you can't offer the option of online office hours too, if you want to. Some students like online interactions. It works fine in some situations, but you must provide students the ability to meet with you in person through office hours if you have an in-person class. You can ask them to wear a mask if you feel uncomfortable meeting in your office with them, but you can't require them. If they show up with without a mask, you should have an alternate space that you could meet with the student. Every department should have a space, a conference room, or a space that could be set up where you could have some social distancing and feel like that there's you're safe in that situation, but you must provide students that opportunity to meet with you. I think it's important for us all to remember, the provost alluded to it, you know, the last 2 years have been not the normal experience. And I think we should all expect that for at least some students, they're not going to be at the same level that they may have been before. These may be our new freshmen coming in the door, or it may have been our students who have taken courses here at OSU under different circumstances. And so I would highly encourage you, there's been some excellent information that's come through ITLE in the last 3 weeks or so about how to do remediation. Find out where your students are. In the first class period or so, give them a quiz on if there's material in your class from a prerequisite course that's essential for them to understand that material to succeed in your class. Get an understanding if they know that or not early on. Give them a quiz early, see how they do, and if what you find is that there's many students who don't understand that material, you may need to revise what you're doing and provide some tutorial to bring them back up to a point where they can be successful. We want to continue to acknowledge that students have had an unusual couple of years. They may or may not be at the same level that you're expected or you're used to seeing in your courses. And if they're not, help them get to that level. Help them succeed. We want them to succeed. Academic alerts, I think, are an important tool. I always recommend them. They're even more important now. There's going to be a new process for how faculty do academic alerts through the SLATE system. So it's going to not look like what you did before. I'm told that there will be online training for that. If we need to get someone here in person to help you, we will do that. But please take advantage of those tools to make sure the advising staff can also help students who are struggling work with you to help them get to the point where they're successful. Get them the resources they need. So vaccinations and testing are still available. University Health Services offers walk-in availability for vaccinations this week, Monday through Friday, 8 to 12, 1:30 to 3:30. Testing is still available, but it's by appointment. So if you want to be tested, if you need to be tested, or you want to recommend to a students asking you about testing, they can still do that on campus, but by appointment. The walk-in, at this point anyway, walk-in appointments aren't available. There's two kinds of testing available. One is the rapid test. That's through the drive-in lane of the University Health Services. It's only 2 days a week that's available by appointment, Monday and Friday. The longer test, the PCR test, is available every day, Monday through Friday, at the health service. So I'll come back and see if there's any questions on the COVID-related things, but I want to move to some of the other things, the great things that are going on. I want to remind you that the progress on Engineering South continues to move forward. The schedule, as of now, hasn't changed, so we're still looking at a grand opening of fall 2023. The sequencing may be a little out of line. Right now, there's some supply chain issues with steel and other things that may adjust that schedule, but right now, not so much so. They're making great progress. They've done a lot of the demolition on Engineering South, a lot of the remediation that is needed, and now reconstruction will be starting soon on the entire Engineering South and the addition, the new Zinc Center for Competitive Innovation. The Zinc Center is going to be a great tool for us as we move forward, a tool to help students succeed, a tool to help students build resilience and grit, and those are things I think that are especially important as we've seen in these last couple of years. We also have ABAT happening. I think hopefully you're all aware of that. This is for all of our engineering programs. Our ABAT coordinators have done a fantastic job this year of representing your departments, being timely, putting together good reports, and documenting the successes that you guys all have. You know, accreditation is an important thing that we do. We don't want to take it for granted. You guys do things every day to strengthen and put us in a good place for that. But I can tell you the coordinator for your department to a T all did a great job of putting what you've done together in a good report. So I think we're ready for that visit. I feel prepared for it. The visit will be a virtual visit, so the team won't actually be on campus. They'll have all of their interactions with us virtually. That will include some group meetings that will include many of you. It will include group meetings that include students, but it'll also be a lot of interaction between the PEV and your program head and program ABAT coordinator. Okay. Questions?
So, if we're not allowed to do the online live stream courses, but if we are feeling good, are we not supposed to come to class and then live stream that, or how does it work if we're not feeling good, or have kids at home that are quarantined?
That's a great question. So they're not supposed to come to campus if they're not feeling good. They're teaching a course, they feel sick. Should they just live stream from home?
I think probably every department's got to think of backup plans for every lecture of every class.
Yeah, I think we do. I mean, what we've been told is we just can't convert classes to online. So I think that's a discussion within the departments on what backups there are. You know, it could be that you have a flexibility of having a one lecture canceled because of how the schedule's during the semester, but if it's more than that, I think it's a discussion with the department about the best way to cover that material. But the message is that faculty cannot just convert their course to online for whatever reason. They've been scheduled as in-person classes, and we need to maintain that integrity.
So for I feel like you have asking for documentation, so it's not feeling good for lectures. But what about a designated exam day, in-person exam? They say I'm not feeling sick, so now they need the makeup exam, which has to be a different form than the previous one because the contents are now been exposed. For that situation, or are we allowed to ask for documentation that they had some kind of medical interaction?
Again, they may not be able to provide the documentation. They may have awakened that morning and they're feeling really sick. They haven't been to the doctor yet, and frankly, we don't want them to come to the classroom.
That's fine, they can email me and say that ahead of the test, that's fine. But if they, before I provide the makeup exam, do we have any ground truthing there?
Well, I think the word that we've heard is we need to take the word for it. We need to be flexible and work with them. I mean, if you get a student who's had COVID 6 times during the semester, then there's a conversation. Maybe you call me and I have a conversation with that student. But in general, we need to take their word for it.
They just announced that we need to have a seating chart they just sent out we need to have a seating chart for all of our classes.
Okay.
Are they going to put numbers back on because in the classroom like this size, it might be work for students?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that may be new to you.
Yeah, that's not something we've talked about at all. Let me get back to you on that. Right now, there's not plans to put numbers, I don't think, back on the seats. So, maybe it's just a photo. You asked everybody to sit in the same place, and you photograph the class, and so you can go back and figure it out. But let me get back on that because this is new information. Patrick?
Turning to the lady's question, I spoke to the university planner, and there is not any plans to put decals back on the seats unless mandated by legislation or Dr. Trump decides that and we're in CDC guidelines. But at the moment, it's going to be as normal a semester as possible with the encouragement of masks and vaccines.
Okay.
So Randy, as you were talking, you memo came out from the provost.
Okay. So
we're getting information as you're talking, so you might want to revise the.
Okay.
That's the only one that really came out there.
So the new, I just told you something, and I'll read what the provost said. So this semester, you can choose for office hours and/or advising to be in person or Zoom. For in-person appointments, you are strongly encouraged to wear a mask. So that's a little bit different than what I said. I guess I would still strongly encourage you for all the reasons we talked about. Dean Tukowski mentioned earlier that it's difficult in architecture and engineering sometimes to convey help in the same way, that if students want and need in-person advising, you find a safe way, in-person office hours, you find a safe way to do that. But that's not the university requirement, it looks like.
It looks like, too, they said that Canvas now has a feature where you can drag a name onto the seating chart of the course.
Okay.
To create the seating chart.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll try to see if there's more information we can get to help you guys on those things.
Right now, they originally require mask vaccination. How about testing those just something that can be
We can strongly recommend that they do that, but we can't require it.
I'm going to switch gears to numbers.
Okay.
Okay, so you have a grand ETA is opening fall 23. Is that a plan to be moving in that summer?
That's correct. So that we would be operational and back in business in Engineering South in the fall of 23. Any other questions? Well, just finally, again, thank you guys all for your patience, for your dedication. We're going to continue having these conversations. Things will continue changing, I am sure. And so please be flexible. I know you'll be proactive, both in terms of helping students succeed, but also understand the difficulties that we're all having in trying to keep the campus safe. And sometimes the conflict that happens between those two things. So thank you again, and have a great semester.
Hi, I'm Jim Smay from the School of Material Science and Engineering over at the Helmrich Center in Tulsa. Some of you may have recognized me from my previous life in chemical engineering, but I've been over in Tulsa for a while. I'm the chair of the CEAT Faculty Advisory Council. I was allotted 15 minutes, but I'm going to be way more brief than that. This is a slide that describes essentially what the Faculty Advisory Council does. We have 9 members representing the various units in the college, where we have 3-year terms. We can have back-to-back 3-year terms. Usually it's a pretty hotly contested position, and winning re-election is difficult, but most people do it. Our main task is to review CEAT policies, and this is a two-way street where the chair and the vice chair attend the executive council meetings, listen to the policy discussions, bring that back to the faculty advisory committee for discussion. The members of the committee should bring it back to the departments in your various faculty meetings and inform you of anything of importance. The second direction on that street is to bring forth issues that may come from the faculty that you wouldn't otherwise send up through your regular channels, through your department chair to the executive committee. The faculty advisory council can bring those issues to the dean and the executive council. So that's effectively what we do, and here are your representatives as constituted at the moment. Sandeep in mechanical engineering, Jim Stein in electrical, Jesse Mao in BAE, Rifat in civil engineering, Terry Collins in industrial, John Phillips in architecture, Josh Ramsey in chemical engineering, myself in material science, and Brian Hoskins representing technology. So these are the folks you should talk to if you have any concerns about Faculty Advisory Council, and also who you should seek to interface with about policies that are coming down from the Executive Council. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'm done.
Thank you, Jim, for not talking about COVID. I'll continue that. I'm going to talk a little bit about numbers, drill down just a little bit, not a long time. I think I'm the only one standing between them and lunch, right? Okay, very good. So I'm going to talk about the support team a little bit, and then some opportunities and challenges that face us coming up. So as I said, I'm going to drill down only a little slightly on the numbers here. These numbers exclude BAE. Very much a similar plot that Dean Tukolsky showed you. The thing that I want to emphasize here, if you take a snapshot of 2015, or fiscal year 15, we're about 12.1 million, and now we're over nearly 25 million, okay? That again excludes BAE. That's more than a doubling of our research expenditures, and that's really fantastic. So, and that if you break that down a little bit further, I realize with this monitor now you probably can't see these numbers so well. MAE comes in really strong at about 6.5 million, followed by chemical at about 4.7 million, civil at about 2.6, and electrical at about 2.1. But scattered, engineering technology, about 750,000. And then we have several of the extension units that Assistant Dean Kirtley had talked about that also comprise an important part of the research mission as well. So we're looking at over 400 proposals that submitted last year. Those results will show up maybe next year. It could be even into the next couple of years. And awards at around 26 million or so in the past year. So those also will quickly translate into research expenditures. Why is this important? Well, if we're talking about growing the number of students that come here, being able to attract top students, we want to be able to talk about top programs, and we looked at rankings like US News and World Report and ASEE to be able to make those kinds of things happen. And these are some of the metrics that are important in terms of defining the quality of a program, especially for graduate students. I'll talk about grad student recruitment in a little bit. One of the things that will be coming in the next months is Randy and his team are going to be approaching many of your departments about some of the numbers. Please work with him to make that happen. We've lost some critical people in that, with Christine Newby going somewhere, going to greener pastures. And so respond to those requests so that we can help put together a solid report. The expenditure information, that's pretty easy to get. We don't have to work hard at that. But GRA numbers, we need those numbers as well. PhD grads, we need that too. So again, this is all part of the total equation. How does it all fit together? We want top students here at OSU. All right, here's my in the weeds chart. I like to give at least one of these. Uniform guidance, a code of federal regulations. Boy, you should read this, like when you're wanting to go to sleep. I'm going to bring this up. Please don't stop reading it. Stop. Okay. There are a couple of things that are coming that are a pretty big deal. Project reports. Failure to provide project reports on time have to be reported in a very formal way now. Okay, and it can reflect badly, and it can, in fact, prohibit us from getting some funding if it's not resolved. And so this will be something that either our collaborator can publicly go look at and say, look, how good is Oklahoma State at keeping up with their end of the bargain? This is going to be public, okay? Also, a small thing, termination. If it doesn't meet their goals any longer, they can cease the program, how you're being funded. And I put this up to be in the weeds purposely, to be an eye chart, to point you to the Wednesday research briefs. I don't know that that's gone out quite yet. Pam, has that gone out yet today? It has gone out. Make sure that you read those every week, because there's going to be information like this that you're going to want to keep up with, and to stay in the know, this is a good starting point. It may trigger lots of questions for you. And in order to get the real answer to those questions, you can ask me, but I'm going to typically refer to my team. Here's the team that we have in research administration. We have Dominique, who's my new administrative assistant. If you can't get a hold of me, make sure you reach out to her. We have a new proposal development specialist, Natasha Deb. And we have part-time, Sunan Thompson. We have a number of folks that continue to rock and roll for us. If you're part of CEAT Research, the support team, would you please stand up? Somebody more here. Okay. Would you please give them a round of applause? We do have a couple of changes that I need to bring to your attention. Tim Slice, who has been with the university almost forever, has retired. He was my first proposal development specialist when I came back here in 2001. He knew the system in and out then, and he'll be formally retiring in October. But in the interim, I've appointed Jamie Westmoreland as the interim research administration operation manager. And she's going to do a great job in that, and I'll be directing some of the questions to her that come up. I will also mention we're going to be losing Emily Talent. Emily is moving to arts and sciences, and that's a big blow for us, but we're actively recruiting. We're going to be here for you to get the job done. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask us to challenge us to get that proposal in. Some opportunities in the way of some entrepreneurship and engaging companies that want to promote our research. This past semester, we worked with a company called First Ignite with Wei-Hua Sheng and James Matamala to get them engaged with folks that are interested in taking their research ideas. It's great to have scholarship. It's great to get proposals, but some of these companies want to try to get this out into the market to do great stuff with it. This company coordinated about 10 to 12 meetings with Wei-Hua, and finally said, stop, I've had enough. And with James Matamala, with folks from all over the world wanting to work with our faculty. We're going to be doing this again in the coming year, and so I'll be sending out some notes to some of you asking about your interest in participating. They come with some pretty tough questions, and sometimes they'll wave it off pretty early because they realize, oh, it won't work for this or that, but it still helps our faculty really drill down on what is it that's key that will make a difference in the world. Way Wild with his socially focused robots, basically for engagement, mental health for the elderly and elder care. And James Montemalo with his acoustic liners, and really important for noise mitigation and energy savings in dynamic systems. A lot of response. It blew them away. They said they've never had this many contacts with the university. So that's good for us. That's really good news for us. I want to talk a little bit about facilities. I have up here images from our imaging suite. Sonia Lee runs that. We have X-ray capability to be able to support you in your research. If you have something that you might need support with, please reach out to her. I put this slide in to prompt me to mention we face some challenges in terms of facility support. We've already had Patrick stand up once, but I'm going to ask Patrick, can you and your team stand up for facility support? They too deserve a round of applause. They provide the critical support we need to execute our research day in and day out. We face challenges with space and how we're allocating space, and I need you to work with me to try to figure out how to keep the wheels running, keep things cranking along. Don't be afraid to bring challenges to us. We are going to have to try to figure out some clever ways to work together, to use our limited resources, and where we can share and pool those resources, the stronger we'll be in making that happen. Finally, I want to mention Grad Recruitment. We participate annually, and we have for the last 4 years, in an Engine database. This is run out of the University of Florida. There's 76 institutions with about 16,000 students participating. You can't really read this, but there's a breakout of the demographics of those students. This is a really powerful tool to identify, in particular, domestic students. Nearly three-quarters of that 16,000 are domestic students interested in grad school, interested in you reaching out to them. They give you their cell phone number, so that if you want to message your lab's particular strengths, there's a receptive audience who's identified that they're interested in coming to grad school. You can identify regionally where you want to target. These are folks that want you to reach out to them. And we've had some really good examples of folks being able to recruit students sort of at the last minute when some things fell through. They've been able to lean on the Engine database to make this happen. This year, I think we're at around 100 or so of our students. We're just wrapping up the request for participation right now. And I'll be submitting that data in the next week or two, and then we'll get access to that database in September. We got to think now about recruitment if we want them to be here next year. So these are some of the tools that we provide to make that happen. And with that, I'm going to recommend that we all have a great year. Let's go big this semester. Let's go big and orange bold. Thank you.
Okay, just as we wrap up, lunch will be waiting for us, but it's also a chance for you to stump the chumps. So now you can ask any question of any of us for the next few minutes, and we'll try to get you what we can, or look up the answers and get them back to you. Any questions for the college? That's great. Okay. Oh, great.
I recently heard that the ag, construction of the ag building had been delayed or maybe even stalled because of the price of construction materials. I think what you said earlier was that it doesn't appear to happen to us.
Well, I think they're rearranging their schedule, as I understand it, because of steel, of structural steel. But the good thing, especially for a person like me, is that that's a concrete frame over there. So the concrete prices, and concrete is widely available, and rebar is widely available because it comes from U.S. mills. So their concrete work will go forward, but the structural steel, any place, including what's might slow us down, is structural steel. So, yeah, I think they're they're rearranging their scale. It might be pushing the edge of their schedule out, but I don't think too much.
It doesn't look like that's affecting us at this time.
Yeah, I mean, we expected the prices of engineering south to hurt us, but in fact, when the bids came in fantastic. And so we took all of the options. We're executing 100% of our options in that building and putting in all the bells and whistles that we wanted. So, and it's still coming in under price. Go ahead.
Yeah, to Lance's question, talking with long-range planning, a lot of materials, steel and such, we did purchase pre-COVID prices. We got that price locked in. It's just that manufacturing slowed down worldwide. It's just, we're standing in line waiting to get the product. But we are still on point. And I did speak with long range regarding furniture building. They're looking at fall 2024 for that completion date still. In case, unless anything else pops up unexpected that we're not got it.
But Engineering South stays, right now, it's staying on track. We told them when they get off schedule, they have to tell us. Yes, sir. Well, right now, they're not off schedule. You see they're doing excavation, other things earlier, that's all.
Paul, let me add one thing. So I'll revert to the original statement I had about the in-person. If you read what the provost said, I think it kind of says the same thing, that faculty need to give students the choice of either in-person or online. And if they all choose online, that's okay, but they have to have that choice. So.
It's important that we work on this. We realize that there's probably a little bit of deficit learning from the last year when everything was online, that not all of the syllabus was fully understood by all students. So in the first week or so of your classes, if you have prerequisites in your class, test that a little bit, okay? Give some quizzes or something like that to help them make sure you know where they are in getting caught up on whatever material, if it's statics or strength of materials or whatever it happens to be, that they have some understanding of that, or at least they have the resources to catch up. All right, then go have lunch and have a great year.